Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 983, and today's date is May 29th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, in the past couple days, the U.S. government central bankers, they've been doing whatever they possibly can to push this economy up to make it look like it is doing much, much better than it really is. I mean, they manipulate the stock market. There was news about the Fed, about their rate hike. GDP was revised. Housing numbers came out. And everyone believes that everything is doing much, much better than it really is. And they need to continually manipulate the information. But when we look closely at the numbers, and we look at housing, we look at manufacturing, we look at retail, we realize that what they're saying and what's really happening are two different things. For example, I talk about housing quite a bit, and housing shows the power and the ability of the people to go out and make purchases where they have the down payments, where they have the money to make the mortgage payments. And right now, the U.S. person, they're sitting on the sidelines right now. They're not making the purchases. They don't have the jobs. They don't have the savings. And most of them are very nervous about continually keeping their jobs because they're seeing layoffs all around them. And we start to look around and we see housing in many different areas. And we see that the prices are starting to come down. The markets are starting to cool off. And this is very, very evident in Miami. Actually, the bubble is starting to pop in Miami in the luxury condo market. And what we're seeing is there's about 3,397 condominiums available in the downtown Miami area. And the current prices, it estimates that it would take about 29 months to sell those. We see South American investors, they're unloading their recently built condos because they don't want them. Actually, the ones they're in contract with, they're dumping. And they're adding about 8,000 units that are still under construction to the inventory. Now, purchases from January through April fell by 25%. The problem is that investors, they're no longer buying there. They're looking to sell. Foreign investors, they have to dig into their pockets to subsidize the rents. Now, when they start doing this, this is a major, major problem. And what we're seeing out in Miami, and this is starting to happen in many different markets around the country, is that the prices that people are trying to sell their condos at are a lot higher because they've been brainwashed to thinking that I can get this type of money. We saw this happen prior to 2008, where people were still out there selling houses, condos, whatever they had. And the prices were very inflated. And what they were doing is they were chasing the market down. This is what's happening in Miami right now. I'll give you an example. In Sunny Isles, down in Florida, people are trying to get $1.13 million. But nobody wants to pay that. These places have come down by $27,000 already. There's another one that was trying to get $1.995 million. They have come down almost $100,000 in price. And it goes on and on. There was one for $565,000. They've come down $33,000 in price. One for $570,000. They've come $34,000 down in price. And what's happening right now is the market has topped off. The bubbles, they've reached the top. They're starting to come down. And I'm not just seeing this in Miami. I am seeing this all over the place where prices are continually coming down. And outside of the cities, the prices are dropping rapidly. So we're seeing the beginning stages of this bubble starting to burst. And this is why the U.S. government central bankers are pushing so hard to convince everyone that everything is fine. They're trying to convince everyone, get in there, get into the market, get into the housing, but it's not going to work. They tried this back in 2008, telling us that everything was contained, that everything was fine. And what's going to happen is that this market's going to come down and the entire economy is going to crash. And there's nothing they can really do about it. They can cover it up, but they won't be able to stop this crash. And we know that the private Western central bankers, they realize that these economies around the world are going to crash. And governments are very nervous. The central bankers are nervous, not in a way that they're scared, but they need to know what the people are thinking. They need to know what people are talking about. They need to know information so they can plan accordingly. This is why they've been spying on everyone. Plus, the people are a threat to their authority. Now, in the Patriot Act, we know that Section 213 was included in the Patriot Act. And we can see that a lot of privacy advocates, they were protesting against this, but it looks like 213 was put in there. And what 213 is, this is a sneak peek warrant, which allows law enforcement to go ahead and spy on the people. And we see right now, from all the spying that the government has done, from everything they've been telling us, this is all about terrorists. This is all about finding the terrorists. Well, we have a report, and this is from the government, detailing the number of sneak peek warrants. And what do they reveal? Well, out of 11,000 sneak peek requests, only 51 were used for terrorism. What does that tell you? It tells you they're not going after terrorists. It tells you they are spying on the people. Now, the government is going to dramatically expand surveillance powers unless Congress does something. Last month, at the request of the Department of Justice, the courts approved changes to Rule 41 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, which governs search and seizure. By the nature of this obscure bureaucratic process, these rules become law unless Congress rejects the changes before December 1st of 2016. The second part of the change to Rule 41 would give a magistrate judge the authority to issue a single warrant that would authorize the search of unlimited number or maybe thousands or millions of devices located anywhere in the world. And we discussed this before. So what we see right now is Congress is sitting there and they need to do something before December 1st. And we see that the U.S. government central bankers, from their own information, they're not looking for terrorists. They're spying on everyday people. Because the terrorists are the government. The terrorists are their agencies that create these events to make us think that we need to remove our rights. We need the government to keep us safe. We need the government to protect us. But this is all fake, phony, and false. This is not true. And this is why each and every one of us needs to protect our electronic data, just like we protect our physical information. We need to use encryption anywhere we possibly can. We need to protect our devices from tracking, like you can use like BlockitPocket.com, where its sleeves, they're interwoven with metals. They block the signal. You can get them for your credit cards. You can get them for whatever you need. It blocks the signal. Encryption for your email makes it so the government can't read the email. And there are many services that provide this. On my site, on the right-hand side, someone created this little encryption algorithm. You can encrypt your message, take that message, put it in the email, make sure the person has the key, and this way nobody can read what is going on here. But there's many ways we can do this. Now, are they completely foolproof? No. We know that locking your house isn't completely foolproof, but you do it. Because there is some sort of protection when you do this. It makes it harder for criminals. It makes it harder for the government. And this is what we need to continually do. We need to continually push back. Now, out in the UK, we know that they're voting on this EU referendum. And what's very interesting about this is that there's a report out there about plans to form an EU army, which we talked about many times. And the blueprint is apparently being drawn up by Brussels and is being kept from the UK voters until after the 23rd of June, after the referendum. Now, the plan includes new European military and operational structures and the EU's foreign policy. We see from NATO, MI5, MI6, they have all said that the UK cannot exit because of national security. However, former Defense Secretary Liam Fox claimed that a leave vote would be the UK's last chance to be dragged into a permanent EU army. So we can see right now the government is holding certain things back, not telling the people, and we know that they're creating this EU type of armed forces, which is not controlled by any of the governments or any of the countries. It's going to be controlled by a non-elected system. And it's going to remove the sovereignty, and it's going to control all the countries by using this one force. Now, President Putin is out there, and he says the U.S. is eroding the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, the INF Treaty, because they've deployed, of course, as we know, missile systems in Romania, missile systems in Poland, missile systems throughout Europe. And he's saying that, what are these? Why are these missile systems being deployed there? There's launchers, there's radar stations, and these missiles have ranges of about 500 kilometers, which could be replaced with missiles with 1,000 kilometers. Now, in the beginning, the U.S. was out there saying, oh, we need these missile systems because of Iran. But Putin is out there saying, well, the U.S. initiated the talks about the Iranian nuclear program. Right now, there is none. And why in the world are all these missile systems being placed all around Europe? Well, think about it. Russia knows it's for them. We know they're placing all these military assets all around the area because they're getting ready for World War III. They have these plans in their heads where they believe that if they have a first strike against Russia, we'll come out the winning side. Now, of course, we know what Russia's going to do now. Russia is going to say, okay, there's missiles right at our doorstep. We have to protect ourselves. The U.S. would do the same thing. If Russia took missile systems and put them in Canada, put them in Mexico, put them in Cuba, what would the U.S. do? They would protect, the U.S. would protect itself. They would question, why are all these missile systems right up to our borders? Something is going on here. Russia's doing the same thing right now. Now, the U.S., they have halted cluster bomb deliveries to Saudi Arabia. Why? Because a human rights organization kept on pressing the United States, asking, why are you selling cluster bombs? Because they're using them in Yemen. And finally, the U.S. has said, okay, we need to put a stop to this because we've been found out here. But the UK, they're selling record quantity of arms, including missiles, bombs, grenades, to many different countries that have dubious human rights records. Many have been accused of war crimes and suppressing popular protests like Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Burundi, Maldives, and many, many more. So we can see that the private Western Central Bank countries, they don't care about the people. They don't care about the rights of the people. They don't care about freedom, democracy. They care about control. Once they have a government in power, they don't care what the people want, think, or do, as long as they can keep control any way possible. When they're on the other end and they want to remove a government, they're all behind the people, freedom, democracy. And you can see it's a complete double standard here. Now, we realize out in Iraq, the Iraqi forces are making a huge offensive into Fallujah. They're trying to get rid of the Islamic State there. And what they're starting to realize is that 80% of the Islamic State terrorists that have been killed in Fallujah, they're foreign fighters from all over the place. And this is coming from Iraq's Al-Nikhil news agency. He says we are fighting governments. We're not even fighting a terrorist group, because all of these fighters have links to Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United States. He goes, so in fact, we are actually fighting different governments on our own land. We see the Islamic State. They are on the move right now. U.S. warplanes, they're providing cover for the Islamic State. As we know, they're providing cover for Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, all the terrorists. And what we're seeing right now is that the U.S., with the coalition force help, they're moving these terrorist groups from Raqqa to Deir ez-Zor and Homs, because they want to preserve the revenue from the oil smuggling operations. And we realize that Russia and Syria, they're pushing into Raqqa right now. So what we're seeing right now is that the U.S. and the coalition forces, they are still providing air cover for all the terrorist groups, for the Free Syrian Army that morphs back and forth into these terrorist groups. And we see at this point that they're really not going after any of these terrorist groups. Their goal is still the same. This is why they're not going to join the forces of Russia going after the terrorists. And Russia continually extends its hand saying, please join us, please join us. And every time the U.S. objects, it gives us more and more proof that the U.S., their goal is not to get terrorists. Their goal is to support the terrorists and go after Assad. And eventually what we're seeing right now is their main goal is most likely not Assad at this point, but to try to start World War III. We can see this by the U.S. forces inside Syria. We see them building the 2 bases. We see Turkey getting more advanced weapons. We see that the safe zone is being established over time, a little at a time. And all of this is going to continue on. And as we get closer and closer to that August time frame, we know things are going to really ramp up. We know there's drills going on right now in Jordan. We saw the same thing happen last year, the year before that. We know they leave military equipment there. We know they leave the troops there. We know that Saudi Arabia, with Turkey and Qatar, they've been having drills with many, many soldiers and military assets. All of this is being prepared and readied for August. And we need to watch the situation very carefully to see how this plays out. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.